Hey y'all, let's chat. So I know I have been missing for a while, a period of time in which I don't think I've ever taken this big of a gap from my YouTube channel and really talking to y'all in present time. I've posted a couple vlogs, but I haven't chatted with y'all. And it is because I definitely hit a mark in my year where shit got real. With my newest, biggest endeavor as of yet. And as you see, we are in a completely different setting than we normally are when I film and do my videos. So I have been doing this video off for weeks, almost months. And I really wanted to get it done before we entered into the new year. Just to kind of get you all up to speed and give you this story time. So here we are. I didn't prepare any notes. I'm just going to go off of kind of the course of events that I can recall and remember and try to bring into this video. So just bear with me if I kind of run back and then come back and run and you know, that sort of thing. But here we go. So I bought a building, right? I have been planning to buy an investment property for the last 2-3 years. As many of you all know, if you've been watching my channel for a while, I got fired from my job in 2020. So that basically kind of disrupted the trajectory. Not that I was thinking about doing it at that moment, but basically if you've ever done any sort of home loan or big loan or property sort of setup, they want you to have up to 2 years in basically consistency of your employment, right? So when you get fired or you get laid off, that disrupts your employment. So I probably would have been able to do this sooner had things not transpired, but everything happens for a reason. So I'll be very candid in this video with expenses and things of that nature. So over the last 2 years, I really made it a goal to save money in the way that I've never saved before in order to make this endeavor happen. I thought multiple times about moving home, but at that time I just was so sort of against how can I put this, like leaving behind some of my independence of living on my own. And I was like, well, I'm gonna figure this out on my own. So what happened was, so my book was like the catalyst. I said I'm gonna use the earnings from this book to build my income. And so what a lot of people don't understand is, like, when you're looking to save a significant amount of money, you either need to create a new stream of income or you need to remove a large expense. So knowing that I wasn't going to move out, I said, okay, the book money will be solely for building my savings so that I could go into this endeavor. So right after I wrote the book, I actually this is how crazy God works. So this lady reached out to me who found out about my book online, and she was developing a mental health sort of app where she needed me to write curriculum for like grammar school, middle school, and high school age students around different mental health concepts. And that was a huge blessing because basically for every submission that I turned in, I was paid between $1,000 to $1,300. So I was running up money quick. That money paid for my 30th birthday trip, my party, and a lot of the money that I used to make this investment. So I got to a point where I probably had about 20,000 saved. Around my goal point to start looking, which was spring of earlier this year. So, but at a certain point, the contractor job, the writing job, it stalled out, and I was like not expecting that. So I kind of panicked a little bit. But luckily, you know, between like doing tonight's conversation, some other really good gigs, I was able to get to like this $20,000 goal. And so that was kind of like my minimum goal. A lot of people who've done this will tell you to try to save somewhere between $15,000 to maybe $25,000. I wish I was able to save a little bit more, but we'll get into that later. So yeah, I got to this point. April of this year, I hit my realtor, and that's another portion of this story. So I went with a realtor who she's originally from Chicago, but she moved to Houston late last year. She is a good friend of mine, and I trusted her because while she was in Chicago, she was one of the best realtors, right? So I went with her. We started the process. First you go through the whole process of getting like pre-approved for your loan amounts. I got pre-approved for a decent amount. Another component of this on the financial end is like when you are an entrepreneur, all you have are your tax returns. I don't have pay stubs to show people. So when I have to prove my income, it goes off my tax return. So anybody who is in entrepreneurship, or just in general, if you want to plan to purchase any sort of property, you need to not write stuff off. So the last 2 years, the IRS been beating my ass. Like, I've had to pay a lot of money to the government in order to make sure my income reflected the numbers that it needed to reflect. So I got approved for some pretty big money. I think it was $300,000 for a 2-unit, $400,000 for like a 3-unit, $500,000 and up for like a 4-unit, right? And so that was based on my income reflecting, because they take the average of those 2 years before you get the pre-approval. So basically, I think in 2022, I think we got my income to about $68,000. This is after taxes, obviously. And then 2023, we got my income to about $71,000. But again, when you are an entrepreneur, it's different because when you work a job, they pay half your taxes. When you are an entrepreneur, you are responsible for the whole amount. So if, let's say, you have $20,000 in taxes that you're supposed to pay, your job, if you work for a company, they pay 50% of that. So you're only responsible for 10. As an entrepreneur, you're responsible for the whole 20,000. So that's just the best example I could give. So that was rough because I think this past year, I actually took on some additional credit card debt, like $4,000, in order to pay the IRS to have the numbers that I needed to have to qualify for the amount that I needed to qualify as an individual. So, right. So, started working with my realtor. Now, granted, she isn't here, so she can't go to viewings with me. She arranged for her Chicago office for somebody to go. The first lady that went with me, I liked her. I felt like she was knowledgeable about the field. And when you do this for a first time, like, everybody tells you to talk to owners, people who do this, other landlords. So I did. I have a note full of like tips and suggestions and advice of like what I needed to go through this process. But there's a lot you don't know and you don't learn until you go through it. I don't care what anybody says. So the first lady that she paired me with to show me the property, she was really knowledgeable. I felt like she had a good critical eye where like, okay, this would need to be taken care of. This would need to be taken care of, things that I wouldn't have noticed. I also had my dad come with me to a lot of the viewings because I trust his judgment, and I felt like he would be just as involved in this process as I would be. So I basically saw I probably saw a total of 4 or 5 properties before I made my decision. Eventually, the first realtor that my realtor paired me with, she ended up switching her out. I think it was an issue with like her availability or something like that. And so because her mom wants to be in the industry and is a new realtor, she had her mom come with me. But I did talk to my realtor about the fact that I don't know if with me being a first time buyer, if that was the route to go. Maybe somebody who was more experienced, but I think I really could have used whoever was going with me to have that critical eye to catch on to things that I probably would have missed. So let's get to how I decided on my property. This was a very unique situation. So the property I ended up going with, the owner had the building since about 2018. The building is a 2-unit with a finished basement, which could also be used for rental income. What made it appealing was the fact that he operated this building as an Airbnb. Now, if you're not from Chicago, you wouldn't necessarily know the area, but the area was not the best. Which I kind of figured that I would have to take a gamble with that based on numbers and, how property value, all of those types of things, right? So I wasn't expecting to be in the best of the best neighborhoods, but it's a little rough. So I was actually surprised that he was able to have a successful Airbnb in this area, because you just wouldn't think about it. But it is close to the expressway. It's in an area where there aren't really hotels or anything like that. So if people want to come to town and stay with family, or stay, not as close to like downtown, this was an optimal sort of situation. So I was like, okay. So the other component that was a selling point was the fact that the owner would leave everything in the building and he would train me to learn the Airbnb business, right? And at the time I was like, oh, this is great. Like, not only am I getting an investment property, I'm also getting a new business endeavor that could be really, fruitful for me. And based on what like his agent was telling us, like he was making really good money. Like he was making, 3-4 times the rent on some months. And he had consistent business year round. And so it's one of those spaces where, and this is the thing in the grand scheme of things, I think it's crazy that you basically sign your life away for some shit that you've only seen maybe 2 to 3 times, like in an hour or so each of those times, if that. Like, so you don't really have time to sit and inspect everything like you would if you lived in the space before you have to make this big ass decision. So going through initially the first walkthrough, it wasn't bad. I was like, okay, this is doable. I had saw photos and everything beforehand. And I was like, okay, the space looks really nice. Like you would think, you see good paint, you see nice, decent floors. The issue was that there was still carpet in the bedrooms. So I knew that would be something that I would want to get addressed potentially when it came to negotiating what changes or things needed to be done before I actually move forward with the process. So first glance, everything was fine. However, we started to, happened was I talked to one of my other homies that do Airbnb, and he kind of gave me the push. Like I showed him all the numbers. Another thing that came up during the process is I asked to see the Airbnb profiles, right? So I could read the reviews. So in the reviews, the majority of them were good. However, there were a handful of them that were terrible. Like from bug complaints to neighborhood violence complaints to people not feeling safe. But at the time, you like, okay, that's a couple bad ones. Maybe they had a bad, couple bad weekends, but everything else seems to, everybody else seems to be great. They enjoyed them as a host. They enjoyed the space, all these other things, right? So, I didn't pay as much attention to that as I probably should have. So, where are we now? I talked to the owner himself. He was very, at the time, kind and eager to help me with the business, and like, yeah, I'm gonna show you some things. We'll sit down, we'll talk about your goals, and this will be very lucrative for you, all of those types of things, right? So I talked to my friend who was in the Airbnb business. He gave me the push. He said, I feel like you should jump on it. He said if it was out, he didn't say he feels like I should jump on it. He said if it was him, he would jump on it or whatever. So that was like my final sort of like nail in the coffin. I talked to my parents about it, all of that. And I just came to the decision to go ahead and pull the trigger. Now, granted, another part of this is the fact that I was on somewhat of a timeline. So if I started looking in April, my lease at the time was up in June. And I had to either decide to pay month to month or figure it out. And my goal was to find and solidify a property by August, September at the latest. So I moved into a month-to-month lease where I was currently staying to buy me some more time. But I still time wasn't on my side. I still had like 2 months of the summer left to kind of figure this out, or I would be like a sitting duck. Because I knew I'm moving this year, like period, point blank. So, we do the inspection. The inspector comes back, of course, with a list of things. While he's there, I'm also doing my own inspection. I went from unit to unit, not with him, but on my own. kind of looking at different things. And I saw some stuff up close, whether it be like cracks in like the ceiling, some things that weren't necessarily aesthetically pleasing. Like, for example, in the closets, they had wood shelves, like stuff that they had just kind of stuck up there. I guess because, you know, it's a short-term rental, right? So they didn't go through the process of actually installing proper shelving equipment, like the ones you can kind of see above me, where you have like a rack and you have a place where you can hang things. Like, that was kind of poorly done. You could also see like certain things like in the drywall where maybe things had been taken down or put up, and it just wasn't really like smooth. Or things that I started to notice were the cleanliness of the units. And I spoke with the owner about wanting it to be professionally cleaned before we moved in. Before I moved in. And long story short, that wasn't done, but I'll reiterate that later. So we moved through this whole process. I have some things on the list, but it's not like make or break major things, right? So, okay. So we moved towards signing. So I had to pay $3,000 in earnest money. And then my closing costs ended up coming to be like, what I had to cash to close, it was about $16,000. Now the numbers did end up breaking down to be more than I anticipated for the building was a $350,000 property. We ended up getting $8,000 in seller's credits because of the floors. They gave me the option of either they would do the floors and they would put the same they would put the same sort of flooring that was in the kitchen in the bedrooms, or I could do it. Based on some of the work that I saw, I didn't trust them really to do a good job. So we took the credits towards my closing costs, which again, I don't know if I would do that in the future. I feel like if you're going to take credits, it really has to put a dent in your cash to close. And I don't feel like it put a big enough dent in my cash to close. I also feel like after talking to other homeowners after the fact, I feel like the loan company I went through, which ended up being Loan Depot, I feel like they didn't, and I didn't know if this was on my realtor or if this was on the mortgage people, that I don't feel like they did enough to get me like first time home buyers like grants and money to go towards my closing costs and my down payment. I feel like they really could have done a better job at getting me certain resources where I wouldn't have had to. I basically came out at $19,000. And I know people who have properties who were more than mine, and they came out of less than half of that. So I was kind of pissed when I found out that there were certain things that existed that I was not informed about and not put on to. So we closed, we arranged for me to move in. And this is where the shit really started. So I move in, and obviously it's an adjustment because of it being a new area. An area I'm not familiar with, so I'm having to get comfortable with my comings and goings. But now I'm really able to inspect and see everything up close. So the arrangement between me and the previous owner was that he would continue to manage the Airbnb business until I was able to do it on my own. They actually had a booking like the day people were leaving, the day I was moving in, right? And so we decided that we would split whatever bookings that we took. Well, I am now the new owner, and he is still managing. The other part of this was at the closing table, there were still a list of things that were not taken care of per the inspection, right? We signed another piece, like my lawyer kind of wrote it up at the table of the things that needed to be addressed, and that he had 30 days to do that after we closed. Now, moving forward, I would not do that. If shit is not done by the time we close, I'm not moving forward. And the reason I say that is because depending on who you're dealing with, it is very hard to chase people down to get them to do the shit that they promised that they would do, even if it's legally binding. Because ultimately, on a couple of these things, it would cost you more to fight them in court to get them done than for them to actually be done, paid out of pocket. So initially, the previous owner was kind, right? He came over, he helped switch over the cameras, he kind of walked me through a couple things. It was cool. But after I moved in, I realized a few different things. The first thing was that it had not been professionally cleaned. We spent the first 4 weeks, me and my mom and my mom's friend, we spent the first 4 weeks cleaning. And you would think that something that is operating as an Airbnb would already be clean. Y'all, it was disgusting. It was filthy. From the fact that the ovens hadn't been cleaned. Like like the ovens hadn't been cleaned, the refrigerators hadn't been cleaned. You could tell areas where the stoves hadn't been cleaned. The stove top, the counters. I pulled the microwave out, it's crumbs all behind the counter. And then I came to understand that he's not paying actual professional cleaners to come in here between these bookings and clean. He's hiring his homeboys or these niggas that work underneath him. And I'll say this. So one person that we met who was supposed to be the quote unquote like property manager. His name is Lonnie. Lonnie, for the most part, I don't have no issues with Lonnie. We meet him, we chop it up. Lonnie starts to give me a lot of insight on like the operations of this building and how it's functioned as an Airbnb, that sort of thing. What else? So I meet Lonnie. We walked through a couple things. So yes, it's disgusting. I started to realize how nasty it was when I really started to sort through things. So of course they had it came furnished, right? So now we have to figure out, I have to decide what we're going to keep in the unit in which I moved into, but then we also have to like move stuff out or throw stuff out or put it in storage or like, so I had a lot on my plate between 3 units. So I'm also going through shit. I'm realizing like I'm pulling out the utensil drawers. It's grease stains on them, like just dirty. And then I have a project of, you could tell like when they would buy new stuff, they wouldn't throw the old stuff away. So there were excessive amounts of everything, of utensils, of sheets. There was a closet with garbage bags full of like sheets and towels. And like, I had to go through that closet. Y'all, when I tell you, we threw out so much stuff. Like, I know the garbage people was like, what the hell has happened? Because every day we was sitting stuff outside for the garbage to take. The towels were like old and I don't know, it looked like some shit, a towel you would use to clean your car, sort of like stuff. A lot of the sheets had hole marks in them. So a big selling point I know for their Airbnb business was the fact that they marketed as 420 friendly. All right, I see the appeal to that, but also now you're dealing with stuff like burn stains in the carpet, burn marks in some of the sheets. So I'm throwing out sheets, I'm looking at stuff. What else did I notice? There were a couple times like when with the whole like us managing the bookings together, that probably only happened about 2 or 3 times before it was deaded, right? So in between that, one time I was out, it was literally like the day after I moved in. I had a speaking engagement. I was exhausted, but he had somebody who was trying to book off the site, because he would do that sometimes, is take bookings not necessarily through Airbnb, but like I'm learning that with Airbnb, a lot of people do like referrals if they know other people have short-term rental properties that they may not necessarily do through the platform. So he hit me while I'm in my speaking engagement telling me that, oh, we got somebody that want to pay, I think it was like $2,000 for the month. But I'm responsible for the cleaning part of it, right? So like somebody else had left before, so the unit hadn't been cleaned. I thought I had time to come back and clean it. I didn't, because now he on my ass about this booking. So he like, well, I got a guy who can go through there and can clean it. He charged $100. Y'all, that was the worst $100 I ever spent in my life, because it was like, that's what I'm saying. Like between that guy and Lonnie, the property manager, they were the cleaners. They weren't hiring real people to come in there and clean. So, yeah. So the other part, when I moved, the same night I moved in, I saw bugs in the kitchen. And I, at that time, didn't know what a roach looked like. Come to find out, my unit had roaches in it. I had to find an exterminator. Luckily found a homie of a homie who does extermination on the side. They were incredible. We came through, we sprayed for me, like, I was so grateful. He reassured me that he would get rid of the problem. But when I kid you not, maybe like the first 2 weeks I was there, I was combating roaches in my kitchen until they finally disappeared. So that was stressful because I ain't never lived nowhere with no fucking roaches, G. Like, I just could not believe that this was my life. On top of, again, analyzing everything all the time. I'm just looking at a million different things that need to be fixed. There was one time after a booking, I went to clean and I saw why there were complaints about sometimes cleanliness, because I would change the sheets and I'm looking and they got like the bed curtain. It got stains on it. Like, they ain't never changed it. Like, looking at the quality of stuff, the mattresses were trash. Long story short, there was really not much of things of value in that I got out of keeping the shit that he had in there. And I came to realize that him doing it that way made it easier for him. Because had I said, no, I don't want this business, but I want this building, and I want you to clear everything out, he probably would have declined my offer, because it would have been more work on him to figure out where he was going to move all this shit. 3 units worth of stuff. But no, I figured that out for him, because I took everything that came in the building. So the other turning point was the issue with the previous owner. So basically the way Airbnb in Illinois works is, in order to do it, you have to apply for, like, it's like a license number or whatever. We ran into issues because I could not apply for the number while he still had the number assigned to that address. And so it was kind of like, from the moment that we cancel his number or he calls to get it, disabled or whatever, I would have to be up and ready to go. So some of the issues came with me questioning him about certain things. The fact that there were bugs in there. He like, me and Lonnie ain't never seen no bugs. You're lying, because one of the reviews mentioned bugs, right? So this is when stuff from the reviews really started to like jump out at me. He like, well, sometimes people say that because they want to get their money back. They're not lying. You're lying. But you don't live here, right? The other issue that we had was, he claims he convinced me to either not move into the building or move into the basement, because the top floor, the second floor, which is where I moved into, was the more marketable unit. Now, never said this to me before I moved in. He just kept hinting at the fact that he didn't think I should move in, but that wasn't an option, right? Never said why. But come to find out, the second floor is the more marketable unit. People prefer to be up top, whatever the case may be, right? So that was the thing. Then once I started asking him about the things on that list that he was supposed to have completed, motherfucker started to try to double dip. So instead of so there was a overhead microwave in my unit that was not working. He claimed at the closing table, that it just was unplugged. But after I plugged it in, it still wasn't working. It worked for like a second and then it stopped working. And even Lonnie said that he thought it had blew out. So now we're talking about shit that he was supposed to have done, which that microwave was on that list. So now he's trying to basically double dip, where he like, okay, so we had this booking. The booking wasn't a lot of money. It might have been $200-$300, something like that. He like, I think it was less than $300. So he basically told me, well, I'll just give you all of the money from that booking and you could take care of the microwave. No. Because half of that money was supposed to be mine anyway. The other half of that is not going to cover the cost of that microwave. So once I started calling out stuff like that, then shit got spicy between us. Because now he's saying shit like, well, you can't, no. So what happened was, with that booking, the people never showed. So I asked him, what happens if they don't show? He says, we still get paid. So I'm still waiting on him to send me my half of the bread. But when we had this conversation, he like, you can't get money for things you didn't do, for work you didn't do. You can't get paid for work you didn't do. I said, niggas trying to get spicy with me. Because, sir, you still owe me a laundry list of things. So eventually my lawyer was able, because his lawyer, they wasn't being responsive at first. But then my lawyer got back on their ass. So I got probably like another $1,200 check that was supposed to cover part of my home warranty and the other things that were supposed to be fixed or addressed, like the microwave. So after that, the man was basically done with me. Like, I'm like, because it was also a issue with the fridge on the first floor. He claimed to have ordered a part for it to fix it. Weeks go by. I'm like, what's up with the part? Oh, it's coming. Then after we had this conversation and he got to pay me that money, I said, so did the part ever come? He like, I'm not giving you that. So either you never ordered it, because why would you keep a part to a refrigerator you no longer have access to instead of just giving it to me? Just being spiteful and petty. So after that, I was just kind of done with him. So something else that came out before I pivot into the next part of this, something else that came out that people don't necessarily know to look at. So my building has a backyard. It is gated. At the time I moved in, it was one large door, like a big ass like fence door. It's like the metal kind, right? Don't think of nothing fancy. Think of the standard fence. Shortly after I moved in, I realized that the door itself was not functioning correctly. It was broken because when they had like a chain on it and a lock. When you unchain and unlock it to push it out, it leans. So taking garbage in and out was a headache. And of course, things like this don't get checked in the inspection. Nobody checks to make sure the fence door is working. So that was another project that we ended up having to come out of basically $1,000 to get fixed. So now I have two doors, because that's how it was never supposed to be one full door. You don't do length of big ass doors like that. You do two connecting doors so that they open out. So we ended up getting that taken care of. It's so much, y'all. So much. I will say my dad was phenomenal and continues to be phenomenal through this process. I would not know what to do if I did not have him. From investing a lot of the money that I needed up front to get some of these issues fixed. Because after that, like I told y'all, I had about $21,000 saved. 19 of that went towards my costs. My grandparents, lovely of them, gave me my earnest money back. So that was $3,000. And I had like maybe $2,000 left over. So my savings account is sitting at $5,000. My goal was to not do this and not have no money left over, because I would be fucked. Right? So my dad, my parents, my family were fucking amazing. So the other turning point was when I decided to take my first booking. Now, granted, I did a little illegal shit. I was fed up with waiting on him because he couldn't figure out how to disable his number. So I took his number and added it to my profile, which is something you're not supposed to do, but hey, whatever. Because I started to panic about money. Like, how was I going to pay my mortgage, right? And he's over here gatekeeping. So I said, fuck it, right? Prematurely. And I learned my lesson from that. So I ended up taking a booking. It was a man, it was a woman with him and like maybe 2 kids that came from out of town. It was a last minute booking. So I pre-warned them that at that time I hadn't gotten to cleaning and sorting so much of the shit that was in that downstairs unit. So I went out and I bought them like paper plates, paper cups, utensils, and I just kind of gave a heads up, like, I'm still working. I just acquired this property. I'm still working on like making things better, basically. So I don't, I basically gave them a somewhat of a heads up, right, about the conditions of the stuff that was in there and all of that. So they come, they stay, and they leave. And oddly enough, I still couldn't tell you where it came from. I go to check the unit to clean up, and there is a hole in the bathroom ceiling. Not a big hole, but a big enough hole where it seemed like drywall had fell in. I'm like, what the fuck happened here? Like, don't know. Still don't know to this day. Call Lonnie, he comes and patches it up, whatever. Then this review comes from this man. Now, he gave me a public review, and then he also gave me a private review. And when I tell y'all he read me for filth, and he was not wrong. He wasn't wrong. And I'll admit this. At a certain point during their booking, I went in the unit. I can't remember what I had to go in there for. I think I was actually worried that the bugs would be out. Because I hadn't been down there. Because the thing about it, this is what people don't tell you, you don't know. Roaches come out at night. They are nocturnal. They don't come out when there's light outside. So I will only see roaches, let's say, like my kitchen light is off. I will come back there, cut the kitchen light on, and it's roaches by my sink, right? And people usually think of like the fat ass roaches. No, these was like little baby roaches. What I learned from the exterminator is roaches have stages, right? So when they these little beetle looking things, these little small like circular things, that's the baby stage. When they get like all cockroaches, the full grown roaches, right? So I was actually a little paranoid because I had never been down there at night to see if roaches come out in that first floor unit. So I go look, I don't see anything. They got food out. I'm like, oh my God, like, please don't let no bugs come out during these people visit. Because now it ain't on his name. It's on my name. This is my profile, right? I done created, that's another part of it. I done created a whole LLC. I got the profiles up. I done did all this stuff, right? So, like I said, the man leaves and he read me for filth. And he wasn't wrong. He just happened to be one of the people who noticed every single thing almost about the space. Like, even down to the fact that, like, they had, like, these little, like, games. It was like a table game where you were supposed to be able to play like fake pool and like foosball, like, and apparently one of the legs was wobbly. There was something else going on in one bedroom where like the curtain, they had like a, number one, it wasn't double curtain, so the curtain only covered like somewhat of the window, which can be, you make you paranoid when you're on the first floor. And then where they, like, the thing that the curtain sits in wasn't there. Them niggas put up, and this is, I say them niggas because we didn't do this. They put up like, it was like a potato chip holder and a fork holding that bitch up. Just ghetto. Like, but he noticed every little thing, wrote it in a review, checked me, on the back end. I thanked him for his feedback because I couldn't be upset he was wrong. I did this prematurely, and now I'm trying to build a brand off somebody else's mess. And I cried, like, talking to my parents about it. I just felt like, I was like, I can't do this. Like, it's too much. Because at this point, not only am I trying to invest money in making the space better, like cosmetically, but now I have to consider all of these other components of an Airbnb, from the furniture to the sheets to the towels to all of these things I have to basically reinvest in because the shit that's here is shit. It's shitty. And I was embarrassed for some shit that wasn't even my doing. So I took one more last minute booking for like the basement. Them people tried to get their money back. I had to call Airbnb about what the issue was. They said they couldn't tell me exactly, but that it was a cleanliness issue, right? I wasn't even surprised. Luckily, Airbnb only gave them half of their money back. They didn't give them the whole portion. Cool, whatever. After that, I pulled my listings from the site. Because if I keep getting dings on cleanliness, that is a violation, and they will kick my ass off. So I said, if I want to have any chance at doing Airbnb successfully, I have to nip this in the bud before it ruins any opportunity that I have to make a business out of this. Without starting over, meaning new profile, new LLC. Like, I just couldn't do it. So I came to that decision. I feel like a part of being a good business person is knowing when to pivot. Another thing that the first guy who came to stay with his family commented on was the neighborhood. He was like, if I had known this building was in this neighborhood, I never would have booked here. Now, granted, I can't do anything about that, right? The neighborhood is completely out of my control. You're not from Chicago. You wouldn't know where you was coming. And it was not like it's not like the block was hot. Like, they wasn't over there, like, shooting or nothing. But, it is, I have the street my building is on gets a lot of foot traffic. More foot traffic than I feel like I've ever been around. Because there is a bus stop at the end of the street, in a major street right there. So a lot of people walk past. You do get drunks over there, potentially crackheads, so I think he made a comment about somebody drunkenly walking past, the window, being loud, stuff like that, right? That is out of my control. But for the life of me, I was sitting here just stumped as to how the previous owner was able to be so successful with this business and I take 2 reviews, I take 2 bookings, and they're both shit. So the wheels started to spin. And I go back and I look at his listings. And I read through the reviews again. And something that stuck out to me was the fact that they all kind of sounded similar. Now, something one of my other people who does Airbnb told me when we were initially talking about me doing it was how people build their profile to be in the algorithm's favor. And what she said was sometimes people will lower the rates temporarily, really quick. You have some friends and family book at those low prices. You have them leave good reviews, and then you send them their money back. And that is how people sometimes expedite the process of building their profile, right? So they can be super hosts and all that other shit. So putting that together with the fact that all of these reviews sound the same, I'm like, gee, I feel like, it's not like Instagram where you can buy followers or buy likes, but I'm like, it just doesn't make sense. You never see somebody on a real Airbnb review say totally worth the money. Unless it's probably something really extravagant. People were saying that, oh, it was so worth the money. Taz was a great host. And it just, to me, it became clearer that those handful of really bad reviews were the true reviews. They have to be. The other ones, like, now sometimes you had a couple people who would like give a critique, but then they will also say, but this wasn't bad, or whatever the case may be, right? But it just, the math wasn't mathing anymore. I said, bro, something is off with this. And me and my realtor talked about it after the fact. She was like, do you think that he made up those numbers that he showed you? And I said, I couldn't know. But one thing I did find out, throughout this process, I realized dealing with him, he is a man that lacks integrity. And I, in good conscience, couldn't move forward with that space the way that it was, trying to Airbnb it out, just getting what I could money-wise from people without feeling bad that I was not providing them with what their money had paid for. And the fact that he was able to do that was just like, I'm like, you are not a good person, because as a consumer of Airbnb who stayed in many of Airbnbs, I too would question the quality of this space and how much you actually gave a fuck. So I decided to pivot, and I said, you know what, I'm going to go and I'm going to find me some tenants, because the people who live in Chicago aren't necessarily scared off by some of these things that I'm having to deal with from people who aren't from here, who are coming to visit, right? I said, me getting tenants, because you got to remember, not only am I paying mortgage, I'm responsible for all the utilities in this bitch. Now, granted, ain't nobody living there, so they not much, but it was too much. It was too much on me. I was so overwhelmed. So I said, look, I'm going to put people in here, like, who kind of know what to expect by moving over here, who can decorate, do whatever the fuck they want to do with the space. Like, I don't care. So that's what I did. I started working, my realtor put me in touch with somebody who does rental leases, and he helped me with vetting people. And now, granted, I see why some landlords move into a space where they do that on their own. You figure out which websites to use for like background checks and credit checks and all of that type of stuff, and evictions, because the people, the realtor, the real estate agents and stuff, they charge decent money for that. So I basically had to pay him. I had to pay him and his company the first month's rent of everybody that he basically filtered through me. Even though one of my tenants I found myself, he still had to drop the lease and do, all the checks and things of that nature. But I mean, it depends on how much you really want to be involved. I understand the benefit of it for me because I didn't have to arrange the viewings. I gave him keys. He came and, toured the units with the people. I didn't have to be available for that. So that was a convenience point of it, because I still got to work. Like, I didn't have to do much of the communicating with people in regards to the details. He did all of that, but I did have to pay him the first month's rent, and then I got to keep the move-in fee. So my first floor tenant, he had worked with her previously before. She's great. She was all ready to move in. We got everything with her was real quick. Now, again, we have this headache of we got to move either all of this stuff out or we move some of it to the basement temporarily to figure out what we were going to do, you know, in the meantime with like all this extra stuff. Now, granted, in the grand scheme of things, a lot of that shit wasn't worth keeping. The mattresses that were on the first and second floor, trash. The bed frames were like super basic, trash. What else? The only thing it take more time for me to explain to y'all what wasn't worth keeping versus what was. The only thing of value were all of the TVs, because it's a two bedroom, 1 bath. So there were TVs in each room. Roku's cool. And he had some vintage arcade games that I thought were really cool, like your Mortal Kombat, your Pac-Man. Like those were really valuable that I held on to. But everything else was like basically garbage in my eyes. So we got her moved in, and then we got my basement tenant actually is her brother. So the setup with him was a little different because he didn't really have the best of credit. So what my parents felt like was best was that like we do a short-term lease and see how it goes. So we did him for 3 months. And he's been fine, paying his rent on time. And then so let's talk about what happened in this period of time. So with me deciding to put tenants in the building, I was having a couple different conversations with other of my landlord friends, and they were suggesting that I leave. And I went back and forth with it for a while. And unfortunately, the selling point of me leaving was the day I saw my first mouse. I was already fed up. I was already thinking about it. I saw the mouse and I said, bro, I have to leave. I have to leave. Another detail, I got my tenants pretty quickly. So I closed, let me give you out the timeline. I closed on the building end of July. I moved in beginning of August. Tried to sort through the whole Airbnb thing. But again, my mortgage was due in September. So I didn't have much time to waste. So September rolls around. That is when we get my first floor tenant in. We're at the beginning of, so sometime in September, middle of September is when I saw that damn mouse. Brought the exterminator back over. He came, he laid traps. I just was so shaken to my fucking core. Imagine sitting, look, you know how you get up in the morning, go to the bathroom, you sitting on the toilet, maybe you scrolling, praying, doing whatever you doing. And I live by myself, so the door be open. I see something out my peripheral. You always see mice out your damn peripheral. And I'm just sitting there like, I just know that's not what I think it is. So right across from the bathroom is the pantry. And the way, again, cosmetically they did this kind of fucked up. The pantry floor doesn't meet the kitchen floor, so there's like a dip. So there's a space between, like, there are bifolding doors. So there's a space between where the door meets the floor and the gap from the kitchen to the pantry floor. And sure enough, I look and that motherfucking mouse pops his head out. And I scream and he runs back into the pantry. And I just lose it. And I try to like put stuff in front of the pantry until the exterminator can get over there. By the time he come, he open it. The mouse not even in there no more. So we go around the building and we look for entry points. This is something else that we ended up having to notice. When these niggas put stuff in, from piping to different wiring, it's like they just punched a hole in the wall. Now, something else I forgot to mention. One day when we were cleaning, the way the shelves is set up, it was like a set of shelves that was like really high, you know, where you just got the two. And when my mom's friend was up there cleaning, she's like, just so you know, it's mouse droppings up here. I'm like, what the fuck? Right? But then we also noticed the hole where the outlet is, where you would connect the this is where the overhead microwave like would be plugged in at. It's just a fat ass hole. So we gotta go through the building. We gotta fill all these holes. And as I'm looking, it's just hella fat ass holes where the certain piping or wiring is coming out. I just couldn't believe, like, it's like one of them spaces where you could tell they came in and they did some renovations, but they didn't do them well. And that is the crazy part about it to me. It's like you spent money and time and effort to do these renovations for you to not keep them up, or for you to do them haphazardly, like half-assed. So we fill out our holes. I never see Mickey Mouse again. And my tenants have not seen Mickey Mouse. Praise God. What I came to realize, and what I'm pretty sure where he came in at, was at the time, the back door, in between the frame of the door, was a small gap. And it was a small gap because that is where they used to run the hose to water the grass. So you could close the door and the hose could still go through. But the hole is big enough for a motherfucking mouse to get in there. Now, how he got all the way upstairs is beyond me. But he ain't came back. He went and found him something safe to do. Thank God. So, I'm sorry, y'all. Look, I've been talking for 51 minutes. It's a lot. So, yeah. We got my second floor tenant in, who happens to be somebody that I knew. And that's another story for another day. We've had not ups and downs, but just some indifference and some doubts. But she seems to be settling in well. She's a little young, you know, living on your own for the first time. You got to kind of go through, like, the first couple of weeks, you have like nerves and you got to adjust. And so we've reached a point where she's comfortable, and I'm happy about that, because Shorty was trying to break her lease early and that was not going to fly. But she feels better now. We've had different conversations where I know that. So yeah, that was my life for the last couple months. And it has been a whirlwind. And I just have to go back to saying, oh, I missed the part. So after I saw the mouse, I tell my parents I want to move out. I want to move out so I can, like, I felt like me, you know, when you're too close to a project, you overanalyze it. Whenever I would bring people to see the building, everybody would compliment it and say, hey, you know, it's not that bad. Like, you can work with this. Like, it's not the worst. Like, it's potential here. And I struggled to see it. Like, I had those first couple weeks after I moved in, I had a lot of buyer's remorse. I was so sad because I felt like I had spent all of this money to invest in something that I had dreams about, and it was not what I thought it was going to be. It was not, like, my reality was just not what I had envisioned. And I struggled with that a lot. And my parents, they just kept, you know, trying to keep me encouraged, trying to let me know that, like, it would get better and I would adjust. And I felt like I could do that easier if I was not living there. Because the thing about it is, my dad put it to me this way, like, you have a certain standard of living, but other people have different standards of living. And that's not to say that you should just give people shit because they've had less than shit and they're grateful for the shit, right? But that means that just because something isn't up to par for you personally does not make it bad. And I realized that when my first floor tenant moved in, because she would speak about how she loved the space. She loved the apartment. She came from a previous building where it just wasn't good for her. It wasn't peaceful. She couldn't go in her backyard because they had dogs and it'd be dog shit. Now she has a yard where her grandson can come and play. And that is kind of what shifted my perspective, which is why, you know, even when you plan to live in an investment property, you can't see it as your forever home. That's what people kept trying to reiterate to me. And it took me a while to step out of viewing it as something that had to be good enough for me. Because this is after I've done a lot of reflecting. So I think because I lived in my previous apartment for 8 years, I always envisioned that when I moved, I would be elevated. And when I moved and I didn't feel as though I elevated, I had a real tug of war with myself about that. I didn't move into the granite countertops and the, you know, beautiful, like, I didn't get that. And that's what I wanted, but that wasn't it wasn't time for that, because this is an investment. This is not my forever home. So once that kind of clicked in, I was like, okay, I'm gonna move, not only to help myself mentally and emotionally and take a step back from this, but also to help myself financially. And so I moved back in with my parents. And when I say that they were amazing, because basically they moved me twice in 6 weeks. They moved me into the building, and it wasn't nothing but 6 weeks later when I decided to move back in to my parents' house. And they were really great for making that transition as smooth and as comfortable for me as possible. I give you guys, this came up on Twitter when people were asking, like, are you a bedroom person or a living room person? The thing that made this work for me is I'm very much a living room person, but I couldn't come back into my house and take over my parents' like family room space, right? That's my mom's space, basically. My daddy be down there sometimes, but he, you know, he got his own little room with his TV where he sit and relax. And my mom sits a lot at the kitchen table to do work and watch TV and cook and all those other things. So what we did was I'm blessed enough, privileged enough to live in a pretty big home, and we have a basement. And so there was a room that my brother previously was using as like a little office workspace when he was living here. But my mom just basically stored like her teacher stuff in here. And so once we moved everything out and we kind of created this to be my own sort of like living room, family room setup where I could work, I could watch TV. I don't have to be confined to my room. I can smoke my hookah in here. That was the turning point. I'm not gonna lie to y'all. My daddy never used to let me smoke in the house. Once I crossed that bridge with him, I think he knew that I needed to move home, and that was going to be a point of contention. But once we got to that, I said, bro, I would have been moved home if we would have let me have this sort of setup. Like it literally is a depiction of all of my apartments with my couch, my table, with my work stuff. I have another table where I sit and like eat dinner or like can sit and eat at, like TV. Everything is comfortable. So if you decide to move back in with your parents, consider if y'all have the space, consider making your own living space outside of your bedroom, because I think that was a game changer for this setup. But yeah, they were amazing. They moved me out twice. I ended up getting a storage unit to store the couple of things that I decided to keep from the units. I kept the mattress in the basement were the best ones, so we kept those. Kept one of the bed frames for the mattress. Kept one of the bed frames. Kept the TVs. I can't even think of what else. Some other, like, maybe 1 or 2 couches. But yeah, so I just got a storage unit and we moved my stuff in here, and I have been living here since the 2nd week of October, and it's been working out. Like, I feel so less stressed and overwhelmed. We still make frequent trips to the building to take care of things, to address things like that are on my list, that my home warranty I can now use to get fixed. But it was a lot. I was overwhelmed. I didn't have time for shit. I was out of the gym for 2 months, which is so abnormal for me. I had a birthday, which was like, this was probably the first year, which is why I ain't get no birthday footage. The first year, I just really didn't give a fuck. Like, I was so focused on trying to, like, survive and thrive and figure my fucking life out, where, like, I went to dinner with some friends. I got a section at the WIT on the rooftop for their day party, and I called it a day, baby. Like, I was cute, of course, because y'all know I always find a reason to be cute and dress up. But my spirit wasn't in it how it normally is. And I think that that's okay, right? Like, I feel like now, looking back, that this was the perfect starter property for me. And it put me in a position to really reevaluate what a long-term plan looks like for me. And so where I am now is, I have not let my Airbnb dream go. I have deferred it. So my plan is to save again, the same way I did the first 2 years, save again for another 2 years, go buy another multi-unit. Because let's stop here real quick. So, previous owners who probably bought before 2021 will tell you, like, oh, get you something you can afford on your own, that you could pay the mortgage with by yourself. And in today's climate, with these interest rates, that's not possible. Unless you make a shitload of money. I'm an average individual. I make average fucking money. Like, no, I cannot pay a $2,800 mortgage by myself. But a lot of people who purchased before this year don't have that situation. They don't have that story because they interest rates weren't crazy. Let's talk about that. So, $350,000 building. Seller's credits, they got down to like 344 or something like that, 342-ish. 6.5% interest rate. I know the previous owner was able to do whatever the fuck he was doing because I know his mortgage was probably half of mine. Like, so yeah, it's just not feasible. I don't have no, hell no. Like, where I came from, my rent was like $950. When I went to month to month, it was $1,000. Like, bro, I'm not used to paying that type of money for rent. Now, granted, my finances have found their ways of working out, because now I'm actually still saving, like I am paying half of that mortgage. So that way, I can be diligent with my money. I'm simultaneously paying off credit card debt and resaving. Half goes to my savings, half goes to my credit card debt until I'm done with that. So yeah, I just had to be really strategic. So my goal is to buy again in 2 years with the mindset that will be my Airbnb property. Now, granted, depending on how many units it is, how nice it is, I may move in, but I'm not sold on that, because I want it to be lucrative, right? And I'm going to end up needing, like, I'm clearing all my credit cards because at that point I will use my credit cards to go and buy the things that the units need to be Airbnb ready, right? The better quality things. And then hopefully as it starts bringing in money, I will pay that shit off and start again, right? So then in another 2 years, unless my husband come and save me, I will buy my forever home. Now, this process has made me rethink if I want to actually buy a house. Before buying a building, I was all like, I'm ready for a home. But I don't know if I got it in me to maintain 2 multi-units and a house. So I may be condo shawty or townhouse shawty. I don't know if I want to do that for myself. We'll see. Shit, I may end up going and get me a nice ass apartment. Like, because now I would have the income from them other 2 buildings to pay these crazy ass rent prices, right? I'm just trying to make sure I didn't miss anything else for you guys that was like really important. Like, if you're gonna go through this process, just be prepared. Now, granted, everybody doesn't have the experience that I've had. I've definitely had my own slew of ups and downs and things that I was not prepared for, but I'm in a much better space. I'm trying to refocus on some other things that are important to me that I've like neglected over the last 6 months that need my attention, like, you know, my content. And I'll do another video about that. I'm in a weird space with content creation overall, but I did want to put this out there for people to learn from, and to just kind of know where your girl been the last few months. But I think that's it. My tenants moved in. We've been fixing stuff. I'm saying my daddy been fixing stuff. I think that's the gist of it. I can't think of nothing else. And once I cut this off, baby, that's it. So I hope you all sort of enjoyed this video, learning about kind of this process and where I've been and what's been going on. But yeah, just continue to send good vibes and encouragement to your girl. And if this is something that you want to do, don't hesitate to reach out to me for questions, and just other things that may pertain to what you watch in this video. So have a good rest of your day.